Hey Earpers, BP here. As always, I'm joined by my co-hosts Monica and Michelle. Welcome back for a special episode of There's Something in the Air. For the last day of October, we have a fan Q&A with some surprise guests sprinkled throughout. Next week, our spoiler-filled breakdown of episode 102 will be released, but some of us have been traveling and we wanted to make sure you had some Earpy goodness to snack on for Halloween. I do want to be sure and point out that none of this was recorded together. I think that's actually interesting as you get further along in the podcast. So sit back, relax, and soak up some good old Earpsplanations.
Hi everyone, this is Monica. First of all, I just want to say many thanks to BP for editing this week's podcast together. She was out of town this past weekend and I am leaving for the airport in like 5 hours. So we weren't able to all record together this weekend. We decided to do a Q&A episode. So the three of us are going to answer some questions from you guys, and then we've also asked some of our friends of the podcast to call in and answer some of ours.
Hey everyone, Michelle here. Here to answer a few questions that you guys submitted, and my favorite person, Kathy, submitted because she likes to be an asshole from time to time. This question is from Hot's House on Twitter, and it is, what do you think about Nicole's house? I think that it looks like a lovely house from the outside. It is decorated way more than my house is because Nicole clearly has better taste than I do. She has a couch perfectly located for vaulting over to save her girlfriend from an insane face-stealing widow, which I think is a giant plus. And I noticed a lot of IKEA furniture, which I am a huge fan of. I feel like this answer is not going to be satisfactory, and Hot's House is going to want to kick my ass. So apologies for this insufficient answer. But I mean, it's a house. It's nice. I mean, it's better than an apartment, so good on you, Nicole.
I love Nicole's house. It looks like she furnished the entire thing at IKEA. I love IKEA. When I was younger, several years ago, it seems like I had more free time. If I would be stressed out, I would like to go and walk around there and just look at kind of all of the stuff and all of the rooms put together. So I really like the aesthetic of Nicole's house. I also think it's pretty cool that it looks like Waverly's apartment above Shorty's was also decorated from IKEA. And I said on my blog that it was a little bit of headcanon for me that IKEA was the first place that Nicole saw Waverly. This question is from Nedley's office. Thank you so much for asking, Jill. She says, I do think one interesting question for all of you is the following. Since you live in so many different and differing places, what do you like about where you live and what don't you like? I live in Pittsburgh. I actually live in the suburbs, but close enough to Pittsburgh. I moved here when I was 18 for college, and I never went home to West Virginia. Pittsburgh has really come a long way in the last 22 years. The restaurants that we have here are amazing, and I love to eat. There's a lot of stuff to do. My wife and I have season tickets for the Broadway series with my mother-in-law, and we like doing that. It's located to a lot of cool stuff. Like I can get to, Columbus in a few hours, or Akron, or I'm still very near to my family, which I like, which is great. And I have friends in Columbus and Akron, which is why that's nice that it's so close by. What don't I like? Pittsburgh has come a long way, and it is much more open-minded and liberal in general than the small town in West Virginia that I grew up in. But I still sometimes, like the further outside of the city I'm about 35 minutes away from the city where we live. And it's not too bad here, but the further you get, like we have friends who live more south. So the further out we get, the more I get stared at. And the more Chris and I don't feel we can be, like we're a very touchy-feely couple. So I feel like we can't really do much of that if we're in, for instance, Washington, Pennsylvania, which is also the town in which we got married. That's a whole story. So I don't love that, but for the most part, we do like Pittsburgh. We've been talking for a few years now about where we want to end up, and I have a feeling that we'll just end up staying here because we do like it. And where we are in the suburbs, we're near to a Target, a Trader Joe's, and a Whole Foods, and you really can't beat that.
I currently live in Iowa near, right off the Mississippi, near the Illinois and Iowa border. 20 minutes and I'm in Illinois. What I like about the area is that it is like living in a suburb of Chicago, which you probably all don't understand what that means. But I grew up in the city of Chicago, which is like any metropolitan area, a clusterfuck of way too many people living in way too little space. And I love Chicago, and I thought for the longest time that I wanted to live in the city. But I took a job out of college here, and the area that I moved to is like a suburb, and I just bought a house in said area. So what I really love is the real estate prices are a lot more reasonable than in Chicago. Taxes are a lot more reasonable in Iowa than Illinois. It's just a slower pace in this area, which is really nice because growing up in Chicago, everybody's pissed all the time because they're always late. Here, people don't care quite as much, which is really nice. And let's see, what else? There are probably more things that I like about this area that I can't think of. Let's just say that I really, really love where I live. Things that I don't like about the area, first and foremost, is that I know way too many people who voted for and are happy with the progress that the misogynistic Cheeto powder covered jackass who happens by some miracle to be in charge of our country. Yeah, no, they're big fans. Everybody here loves Fox News. I work with people who, when you take like a business trip drive, they will put on fucking Fox and Friends on the radio and act like it is awesome. And it's not. It's not. I'm not a huge fan that since the area that I live in is a bit more conservative than, living in Chicago. I feel like I need to be a bit more careful about who I let into my personal life because I am gay. At work, I feel like it's a gamble because being a woman working in a technical field where I'm the only woman on my team of maybe 30 or 40 people, it's already kind of it's a challenge. It's a hurdle. And then being gay on top of that is just even more of a hurdle. So I'm not a huge fan of how I have to kind of be buttoned up on that aspect. But overall, I like it. It's a lot more relaxed pace. And me and my dog Opal, we just enjoy our time here.
What do I like about where I live and what do I not like? I'm originally from Central Florida and I moved here to Atlanta about 6 years ago. I'm kind of a seasons girl. I had visited a little bit north of here in the Blue Ridge Mountains ever since I was little because my grandparents had a cabin up here. And so I liked the weather up here a lot better than where I was from. I did take a small detour to New Orleans for several months in 2013, but that is a story for another day. I think I like the fact that we have seasons without being too drastic, except for I'm not a fan of summer in general. It's not only a time where I dislike the temperature, but I also get really depressed. So, yeah, I like to be different than everybody in that way. So I'm going to say weather is what I do like. What I don't like is that I was not from here and the city is so large that I find it a little bit difficult to meet people.
We had a question on Twitter from someone named Maddie. She actually asked 3 questions, so I'm just going to answer one. The question is, besides a normal date, what would you like Waverly and Nicole to talk about in season 3, and how do you think their relationship will further? I would like to see them talk about the cult of Bulshar and how it's going to affect Winona and the relationship with Winona with regards to her and Waverly's mother. I'm really excited to see how everyone will be incorporated into the big story of Peacemaker and the Earp Curse and the entire show, and I'm super excited to see how they'll play into the full show and the full cast as a whole.
Now we have some Q&A from our very first special guest, Bridget Leszewski from TV Junkies.
Hi, Monica, BP, and Michelle. This is Bridget Leszewski from the TV Junkies. Monica sent me a few questions and asked if I could answer them and share my thoughts, so that's what I'm doing. The first question posed was, do you think Doc's guns are like Peacemaker at all and have any sort of sentient power? Or are they just guns? So I'm probably an awful person to ask about theories when it comes to the mythos behind Wynonna Earp and all the rules around Peacemaker, etc. I fully acknowledge that that's not why I watch the show. I watch the show because I love the characters, and I'm the first to admit that I don't fully pay attention to all the rules of the universe at times. So I've honestly never really thought much about Doc's guns, at least the ones that shoot things. But I will say that I always love that even though Doc is the best gunslinger, he's not the one that gets to save the day. The last shot always comes down to Wynonna. So I'm going to say no, I don't think his guns have any powers, and that just like Wynonna, I think Peacemaker is one of a kind and the only gun that is truly special. The second question was, what is your favorite Wynonna Earp thing that no one ever talks about? So this was kind of hard for me because there is a complete lack of chill in the Wynonna Earp fandom, and it's really hard to think of something that no one talks about since it seems like even the smallest details never make it past Earpers. Like, they talk about any and everything related to the show, and a lot. So keeping that in mind, as well as the fact that I'm a TV nerd and I kind of always love hearing from people who work behind the scenes on my shows, I'm going to say the Wynonna Earp writers in general. Emily Andrus gets a ton of credit for all the great stories the show's telling, the themes, and, you know, the all-around awesomeness that is Wynonna Earp. But there's no question that she, like, 1000% deserves that credit and is the reason that the show is what it is, because of Emily's voice being this guiding force behind everything. But I do think that maybe we need to talk more about the other awesome writers that are on the staff. I think it's such a great group, and I don't know if we're always giving enough credit to people like Brendan York, Alexandra Zeroni, and Caitlin Friars for the amazing episodes that they are contributing each season. It seems like the writers have always like fully embraced and gotten Emily's vision for the characters, and they've really taken it and run with it on many occasions. I know season 3, we're going to have some new voices in the room. We have Shelley Scarrow joining, who wrote one episode actually back in season 1. So she's coming back. And then we have Noelle Carbone joining the staff as well. I always think it's awesome that we're getting more women in the room. And I know that's something that Emily always puts a priority on. Shelley obviously should already be familiar with the characters. And I think I've been pretty vocal on Twitter about how I am a huge Noelle Carbone fan from her work on Rookie Blue and Saving Hope. So I guess many of the things that we love about Wynonna Earp, I think wouldn't be the same if we didn't have this really great room of writers, and I'm all about giving them more love. So I guess after a long, hard consideration, that's what I will say. The last question was, what do you think Doc's driving force is as a character? Has it changed from the beginning of season 1 to the end of season 2? So, I definitely think Doc has grown since we met him in season 1. In fact, it's one of the things about him that I love the most is that he hasn't been opposed to the change and he almost has embraced it. I think when we met him, he was obviously a very selfish person, and his driving force was always looking out for number one. We saw how that kind of attitude got him in trouble with Constance Clutie and others, and I think once he made it out of the well, he realized he needed a change. Meeting Wynonna obviously has also changed him. They're not together romantically at the moment, but I tend to be under the same belief as Tim Rosen that Wynonna is the love of Doc's life. I think he wants to be a better man for her and now for their baby. And I think he's like going to be fully on board with Wynonna and that he wants to break this curse so their baby won't have to. Doc has changed a ton since the beginning of the show. And I think the change also drives him. He's not looking out for what is best for him, but for what's best for those around him that he really cares about. And quite honestly, it kind of makes me love him even more. I didn't think that was possible, but I do. But I guess that's all from me. Thank you to you three ladies for asking me to take part in this. It was a lot of fun, and I'm really enjoying your podcast. I can't wait to hear more episodes. So thanks a lot. Bye.
How about a question and answer with the infamous Doc Stash?
Hello. Okay, question one. Is there any circumstance in which it would be okay for Tim Rozon to shave his mustache? Uh, no, absolutely not. The dude needs to keep his mustache on his face at all times. I mean, so what if he has to compromise his own comfort by having, massive amount of facial hair hanging over his lip and under his nose at all times? Or so what if he has to turn down amazing opportunities as an actor, because of it? I want him to have a mustache, and isn't it all about me? Or at least I want to approve a role he takes before he shaves it. Okay, no, but seriously, back to life, back to reality. Uh, the dude is not defined by his facial hair. Yeah, he grows magical mustaches and beards, and yes, I have babbled on about it for a year and a half on Twitter, but I'm not a superficial asshole. I appreciate Tim, as a human being. He can shave off all the hair on his body for all I care. He'd still be one of the most awesome people I've ever met. I mean, the dude's freaking so solid, and I adore him. And he's incredibly thoughtful to so many people, and we Earpers are lucky to have him. And at the risk of losing my stasher membership here, that overrules a mustache any day. Okay, question number two. How did Doc pass the time in the well? The well. The well. Um, Even picturing him in there makes me so sad. Okay, so, Doc says to Winona in episode 209, Forever Mine, Never Mind. He's talking to her during the evening of their dinner date. He says that Constance, it wasn't just a random choice, that, she chose that particular torture, and, it wasn't just an arbitrary thing. And then he goes into the story that he tells her about his mom dying. And but side note here, this is one of my favorite scenes of Doc's, and more importantly, I think one of Tim's best performances. And I don't know if he does like one of those demo reel things, but if he did, I totally think that should be on the demo reel. But anyway, side note. So yeah, he's 14 years old. He's telling the story. He's 14 years old. His mom is dying of tuberculosis, and he couldn't be near her because it was contagious. So he crawls under the space in the house that's right under her room, and he's sitting there listening to her cry, and he's begging and hoping and praying, that she's going to get better, but, she dies anyway. And he says to Winona, and I never again could stand tight quarters. Yeah, I should not be doing a Doc impression because I cannot do one. But anyway, I know there's talk of tunnels, with the well, but my guess is those tunnels aren't super spacious, where you're able to stand up and stretch or, do jumping jacks. When were jumping jacks invented? Doc probably doesn't even know what a jumping jack is. Yeah, so I think that a lot of the passing time was hard as hell for him. I mean, that scene triggered a lot of emotional shit for me when, thinking about when my mom was dying. And so maybe I'm just projecting onto Doc, I don't know, but there would be a lot of freakouts down there. I mean, when he's back in there in season 2 before realizing there was a ladder, the look on his face, I think that gives you insight into what was being triggered. So yeah, I think a lot of time in the well was probably panicking and crying and being angry. And and since he was in there for so long, maybe it was therapeutic for him, and that he really didn't have any choice except to, face the demons of losing his mom and, being in this tight little enclosed well. So yeah, maybe he was able to work through it to a certain degree. Losing a parent, isn't something you ever get over, but, he has way more time to process it than any human could in a lifetime. Maybe he had conversations with his mom. I would think, after some time in a well like that, you would begin to hallucinate at moments. Yeah, he was immortal, but if he can be gasping at the bar because he's so thirsty. I imagine he was hella dehydrated and probably starving, and, you know, with the tunnels, hopefully there was enough room for him to stretch out and sleep. I'm comparing it to, being in a prison cell, and I've watched those lockup shows, and the prisoners are always saying that, they'll do a lot of sleeping because it's an escape and you can be free to run or do whatever you like in your dreams. But, you know, the human brain also can't handle trauma every second of every day, and it needs to take breaks, and I think it forces you to take breaks, so hopefully Doc found ways to laugh or ways to amuse himself down there. I mean, he's a pretty resourceful dude in general, so I'd say he channeled his inner MacGyver and found ways to have fun. Okay, question 3. What do you think Doc's driving force is as a character? And has it changed from the beginning of season 1 to the end of season 2? Oh man. Okay, well, I think Doc Holliday has been portrayed in the past, the stereotypical fastest gun in the West. Um, Doc from history, all his tall tales. I mean, it's been said that the real Wyatt Earp was known to embellish stories, so I don't know what is truth or not, and I haven't dove in at the level that like a Western historian would. But we get some of what we know or would expect to get from a Doc Holliday, but Tim gives Doc so many layers. And honestly, I feel like while Tim has already given Doc so much more depth than we've seen in any portrayal of Doc, I still think we're scratching the surface or, the top layers. Surprise, surprise. I would love to see more focus on these. And because of these layers, I can't really sum up, one particular driving force, with a statement or a few words. We've heard Tim discuss this, or, so I think everyone has a general idea, but, he's more than just revenge or love or pride. Yeah, he's been described as selfish, and he's been accused of it by characters on the show. But, I don't know. Humans all have selfishness inside them. We're all, we're all concerned with our own welfare or, well-being to a certain degree, and you got to balance it and obviously not use it for evil, but, to be happy in life, you have to do things that make you happy. All choices have to do with that. So having, some selfishness isn't bad. Like for example, Doc chooses to give his ring to Winona, and yeah, at first he's all hell no. That's probably any initial human response when you're thinking your life is at stake. But um, he sees the big picture and his desire to help Winona and the love he has for her. That forces him to give it to her. But he wants to do that, and it means more to him than his own immortality. Um, as far as Doc changing from the beginning of season 1 to the end of season 2, I don't think there is, one change. In my opinion, Doc changes in every episode. Again, it's the layers. I'm basing this on, my reaction and other Earpers' reactions to him. I see the badass, the Doc who makes me swoon, the funny guy, the guy who makes me cry, and hell, I've even kind of gotten pissy with him in an episode this season because I kind of thought he was being a dick for a hot second. But that's what's rad about Doc Holliday. He keeps the viewers on their toes. You really don't know what you're gonna get. And props to Emily and the team of writers for that. There's such a smooth flow from the writers to Tim to Doc. It's like a well-oiled holiday machine, and if one of the parts were missing, it wouldn't work. You could take another actor and he wouldn't dive into the words written for Doc like Tim does. Example, like if you've seen, or if you've been to a panel or you've watched one of the periscopes or whatever, you've seen Tim get emotional, and that same emotion is there in Doc during the sadder moments. Like that's real sadness, and it's impossible not to react to that. And no other Doc Holliday has really even made me go, oh, or let alone tear up. Yeah, I guess I digressed a bit here, but I guess in conclusion, I think his driving force changes constantly, as does the character himself.
Okay, now we have a question answered by our friend Heidi, who is HiDizzle20 on Twitter.
This is Heidi, calling in to answer a question, and I feel kind of silly just talking to a voicemail, but that's okay. So the question Monica sent me was, Anne of Green Gables is a revenant. How does Winona put her down? And my first thought was, does Monica even watch this show? Which hopefully she laughs at. My second thought was, is this a trick question? Are you trying to get me to answer this in a different way so that I get Earpsplained? I don't know. So, I'm just going to answer in the obvious way that Winona puts her down by shooting her in the head with Peacemaker, which is, I think, the only way you can put a revenant down. Yes. So, not a very exciting answer, but I think it's the only answer. So, look forward to listening, and yeah, bye.
Okay, Heidi, I can't even with that answer. Later, I'm going to Earpsplain to you how to Earpsplain things. And you know how much I love Anne of Green Gables, so you can look out for that to end up being its own What If episode. Can't wait. So Amanda on Twitter asked where Earpsplain came from. Honestly, originally it started as kind of a bad term. And now we've just adopted it as our own. One day I was on Twitter, and one of the things that I really like to do with any show is go into kind of like bonkers theories, just out of the world explanations, some what ifs, like, hey, if this thing happened, wouldn't that be really neat? And when you're doing that, it doesn't always follow, the exact details of plot or mythology or background. It's just a way for me to have fun. It's a way that I engage with shows and with things that I love. And there are some people that I've found that like to do that with me, like Monica and Michelle. And that's kind of why we're here together. But I was doing that one day with a group of people, and others kept kind of jumping into the conversation to explain why these things were almost impossible or just wouldn't work within the context, or basically correcting us while we were, being silly. So the phrase came out of that, like, as if you're trying to tell me I don't know what's going on in the show. Oh, you're just going to Earpsplain it to me. And now it just kind of goes with everything. We just enjoy it. Now we talk to each other about it. When we say, oh, you think I made a mistake? Well, why don't you Earpsplain the truth to me? But really, it's just a good time. I think that people should be able to enjoy fandom kind of the way that they want without everyone else getting all up in arms about it. And so, yes, we normally know what the, boiled down mechanics are of exactly what's going on. But sometimes we just like to get a little bit out there. And if people don't want to come and hang out on those limbs, that's totally fine. Don't do that. But that is what we enjoy, and so that's where it came from.
I had asked a couple questions to Michelle and BP specifically because they're so similar. I was curious if the twins would answer the question the same way.
All right. And then we have a few questions from Monica, who apparently is trying to kill BP and I, because as you guys may or may not have caught on from listening to our previous podcasts, we are both huge fans of Clark Griffin. If you're not familiar with Clark Griffin, she's a character on The Hundy, on the CW, problematic show, still love it, judge me all you want. All right, so the question is, how is Clark Griffin most like Agent Dolls? Which, obviously she couldn't ask how is Clark Griffin most like Winona, because they're both fucking badass women, much like Root, obligatory Amy Acker Root mention. Sorry, guys. All right, so how is Clark Griffin most like Agent Dolls? The first thing that comes into mind is that both of them will do anything for their people. Like, Dolls lets himself get taken by Black Badge, to try and save Purgatory from, Lucado and her wanting to send in the Tomahawks. He sacrifices himself time and time again when they finally broke him out of Black Badge and he couldn't come back right away because he didn't want to endanger them. he's sacrificed so much for the people that have become his people. Much like Clark Griffin, who, as you may or may not know, will commit fucking genocide. And I mean, and it's completely justifiable because she says, "for my people." And I mean, you say that and you could pretty much do anything. And I'd be like, well, it was for your people, so good on you. Another thing that Clark and Agent Dawes have in common is that they both started off wanting to go by the book, follow the rules. For Clark, they got dropped down to Earth, and their directive was to go to Mount Weather, and she was like, we're going to go find Mount Weather. This is the plan. We're going to do this. Dawes came in, and he's like, all right, we got to get rid of these revenants, these demons, so this is what we're going to do. Bum, 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 wanting to follow the plan. They both learned, in dealing with their team of misfits, in both cases, that isn't the most important thing. Most important thing is keeping the people that you care about safe and doing the best that you can, and you fuck up and it's fine. And yeah, I'm gonna say that's how they're alike. But mostly the "for my people" thing, because come on.
Oh my gosh, Monica with the attacking questions. Oh man, Clark and Dawes. If you guys have listened at all, you know Michelle and I like to have what Monica calls Hundy spirals, which is where we will go down the spiral, talking about Clark Griffin from the show The 100. Clark, and Dawes. I would say one of the most obvious things that they have in common is that they are big picture people with a singular focus. And what I mean by that is there's an overarching goal and something that they know needs to be accomplished. And I think both of them are pretty strategic, almost in a chess-like sense, of being able to move people around on the board to where they need to be in order to serve their ultimate goal. Neither one of them is particularly concerned with losing a few people or pieces along the way, as long as it's not their small, super inner circle of people. They both know what it is to sacrifice. They both turn their emotions off in order to accomplish the task set before them. And those tasks are always tied to changing the world, or saving the world. So it's not that they are insincere. In fact, they both have very, very deep hearts, but they will set aside their own desires and wishes in order to protect everybody else, especially when it comes to the infamous "my people." They both have had very difficult relationships. I think that they always expect to end up quite badly, and so there's a little bit of their heart that's locked up as well. And you know that I could talk about this for hours and hours, but I'm going to leave it as that for my initial answer.
And then the second question from Monica is, what is your favorite non-romantic pairing? That is a very good question. And I'm struggling because I didn't want to think about these answers too much before I recorded. And now thinking about it, I have so many non-romantic pairings that I love. So I'm going to give you one that is an actual non-romantic pairing between two living beings, and then non-romantic pairing between, I don't know, somebody and an inanimate object. For example, I really, really love, as we mentioned in the podcast, Wayshot. Waverly and her shotgun are OTP for sure. Love them. I hope that Waverly just carries that shotgun everywhere in season 3 because it is so great. And then living being to living being, non-romantic pairing. Oh boy, that's a hard one. I think that I'm going to say that it's Jeremy and Doc. Now I know Jeremy would love for it to be a romantic pairing, but as often is the case when you have a crush on a straight friend, it's probably not going to go anywhere. And I really like it because It's just a great dynamic. They have such a great relationship. Jeremy is just so smitten, and it's adorable. And Doc treats him, not like it's an awkward thing. It's so obvious that he has a crush on him. And he's like, you know what? Whatever. This is just how it is. You're my friend. And oh, you are like you got some superpowers of your own. Like you can tell what people are thinking or need from, I don't know. I don't know what his superpower is, but it's pretty cool. And I just really like their dynamic, and I really hope that we see more of it in season 3.
Come on, Monica, this one's a gimme. I'm a little surprised by this. Favorite non-romantic pairing. There are so many good pairings on this show. It is honestly kind of hard to rank them at any given time. It almost depends on what kind of mood you're in. Do you want to go funny? Are you trying to laugh? Do you want to cry? Which is where I'm going to end up landing. Hopefully in the broad spectrum, though, because my favorite relationship on this show, period, the end, is the Earp sisters. Winona and Waverly are it for me. I don't even feel like I need to explain myself. That's my jam. That's why I watch. I love a lot of the other characters. I love a lot of the other dynamics, but at the end of the day, they're it for me.
Thanks to everyone for writing in. Hopefully we can do another one of these in the future and we'll get more questions. We do love talking about this kind of stuff. I do prefer recording with them as opposed to just sitting here in my office staring at my nerd stuff, talking to myself, screaming into the void. But this, I think, was a good substitute. Sorry again, guys, that I would be out of town and wasn't able to record. But thanks to everyone for asking, and if you have any questions you want to ask us for a future episode, please tweet at or DM us at Earpsplain Pod. You can leave us a voicemail at 678-871-0098, or you can email us at somethinginair@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at lesbianzer, BP at beep33tv, and Michelle at micnic1291. Did you love this podcast? Rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes and Google Play. Did you hate it? Keep it to yourself. Just say nice things, please. We're begging you. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and remember, it may be a shit show, but it's our shit show.